Hi there, welcome to the Healthy Church Staff Podcast. My name is Todd Rhoades. I'm one of the co-founders over at chemistrystaffing.com, and I'm your host each and every weekday here on the Healthy Church Staff Podcast. We are going to, since it's coming up on the end of the year, we're going to start a new series here for the next couple of weeks because I know a lot of churches and a lot of individuals are looking for, churches are looking for new staff members. Staff members are maybe looking for 2025 to be a year maybe of transition for them from one church where they are to another church. So today we're going to talk about, for churches, when your church should hire. And really, I put it in the title, timing is everything. And it's funny, church hiring can feel a little bit like those home improvement projects, you know what I mean, that we've been putting off. You wait until something breaks or you're knee deep in a crisis and then it's suddenly urgent. I have a great example. Our furnace at our home about 3 years ago, we had our annual check and they came out and said, you really should get a new furnace. This is just not going to last much longer. And I'm like, but it still heats my house. And 3 years later, it's still heating my house. And rather than cheap, when it breaks, I'll fix it. So sometimes church hiring is like that. Specifically, you wait until you just can't put it off any longer. Today, we're going to talk about timing. Specifically, when is the right time to hire for your church? And let's be real, most churches wrestle with this. Is it too soon? Are we waiting too long? Should we just duct tape the problem with a good volunteer right now and hope that it holds for another year? So let's get into it, okay? So first of all, let's do just a really quick reality check. If your team is stretched so thin that they can't remember the last time that they had a weekend off, that might be your first clue that it's time to hire somebody. Ministries demanding. We talk about that all the time here on the podcast. We all know that. It's demanding, but it shouldn't be unsustainable. So if people on your team are constantly overwhelmed, there's a good chance that you're very low staffed and you need to consider hiring. And let's talk about growth. That's a big one, right? We're growing, so we need to hire. Well, that's true, but growth isn't the only reason. Sometimes you need a new staff member just that kind of comes from a different place. Maybe your church has a critical gap that you're finding volunteers just can't fill. Or perhaps you're feeling the effects of turnover, like a key staff member left, and it feels like the wheels are starting to fall off. So here's the deal. Hiring isn't just about doing more, okay? Hiring's not just about doing more. It's often about doing what you're already doing better. Okay, so let me give you an example. I know a pastor that told me his church had been limping along without a youth pastor for about 2 years. And they were holding it together. They had their volunteers doing as great a job as volunteers can do in a large youth ministry. But the youth ministry was just struggling. The students weren't engaging. The volunteers were absolutely exhausted. And it wasn't until they really brought in a full-time youth pastor that things really started to turn around. And they didn't grow overnight, but the difference in the health of the ministry was absolutely day and night. Okay, one other thing I want to address here while we're talking here, okay? I want to address something that I see way too often, and it's what I call the panic hire. And this is when you realize yesterday that you needed help, so you just rush the process, right? Desperation leads to bad decisions, lead to, in almost every circumstance, regret. Don't fall into that trap. Instead, I want you to take a proactive approach. Think about hiring almost like planting a garden. You can't toss seeds in the ground and expect tomatoes tomorrow. You've got to prepare the soil. You got to plant intentionally. You got to give it time for it to grow. And that means planning your staffing needs for the next 3 to 5 years, not just reacting to the fire that's right in front of you right now. And one more thing, pay attention to the small whispers before they become those loud shouts in your brain. If your staff is grumbling about being overworked or volunteers keep quitting mid-year, that's a signal. There's your sign, right? But don't wait until you're in full-blown burnout mode to start thinking about hiring. Okay, so here's the practical application today. I want to get really practical. And here's what I want you to think about doing. It's the middle of December. We're getting ready. A lot of churches are developing their budgets or already have their budgets, but they're looking at what they're going to do for next year. Take 30 minutes this week, just 30 minutes, maybe even right now after you're done listening to this podcast. Sit down at your desk, get out a piece of paper and a pen, and assess your staffing situation. And I want you to ask yourself 3 questions, okay? First question, are we overloading our current team? Are we overloading our current team? Number 2, are there gaps? Are there ministry gaps that we're just struggling to fill with volunteers right now? That's number 2. And then number 3, are we being proactive or are we just reacting to problems as they come up? Now, if your answers make you squirm, it might be time to start having some serious conversations about hiring and adding people to your team. Trust me, a little reflection now can save you a lot of headaches later on. And hey, if you're feeling stuck or unsure about where to start, let me know. This is something that I help churches do every day. Just shoot me an email, podcast@chemistrystaffing.com. No pressure. I'm not a salesperson, believe me. So I'd love to have a conversation about you and your church, what you're thinking about 2025, and then I'd love to take a longer-term approach with you. What do you think in the next 3 to 5 years as far as your church, as far as staffing? I'd love to hear just what's going on at your church and help however I can. So if your church is thinking about hiring, this is the time of year that a lot of churches start to think about that and have those conversations and plan in their budget. Let me know. At Chemistry Staffing, we specialize in helping churches just like yours find the right person for the right role. Hiring is a big deal. It's what I've given my life to Jesus. I've given my life to Jesus. But helping churches find healthy, we call it healthy long-term fits. If we can find the right person that can minister in a local church for 3 to 5 years, incredible things happen in the kingdom. And that's what I've given my life to, is helping people like you in churches like yours hire great people. And another thing, just before we leave, if you're not subscribed to this podcast yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button so we can start hanging out every day. Today, actually, is episode number 241, believe it or not. So hit that subscribe button. Tomorrow, we're going to dive into how to budget for your next hire, so you won't want to miss that right back here on the Healthy Church Staff Podcast. Thanks so much. Have a great day.